Um, Bill has been in the industry for
34 years.
34 years, and has loved Burgundy, France for
32 years.
32 years. So that's sort of how it works. So he's going to give us a lot of great information. Somebody who we have our store has a very good relationship with, and a lot of respect for his particular knowledge. So no pressure or anything.
No pressure.
Yeah. So
No
if
pressure.
you're ready to get going,
I think we're
why don't
ready.
you tell us about what we have in our glass. Yeah, we'll make sure that we have.
I was told to talk about the first wine first so that you don't drink too much while I'm talking about the intro before we get to all the wines. So my name is Bill Saroka. I've traveled to Burgundy quite a lot, actually. And it was like one of my first loves when I got into wine. And we're going to talk about it tonight, talk about the first wine. And please stop me, ask some questions. I've been drinking Burgundy, studying Burgundy, going there, and it's still extremely complex for me. It's complex for everyone. It's a very intimidating area with a lot of strange names, and they expect you to know something about the wines, so it's not always clear on the label. So what we're going to have first is what's called Bourgogne de Crémant. So Bourgogne de Crémant is a sparkling wine that's made in Burgundy. When you see the word Crémant on a French sparkling wine, it means that it's method champenoise. What that means is produced like champagne. There's two ways to make sparkling wine, as everyone know. You can either make it re-fermented in the bottle, or you can ferment it in a tank. So Prosecco, fermented in a tank. Charmat method, all Crémant is fermented in the bottle. Method champenoise. Makes it more complex. It's on the lees for a period of time. Crémant de Bourgogne must be on the lees in the bottle for 12 months. Then you can disgorge it and sell it. Okay? So that makes it a little bit different, and you'll find the prices are very, very fair. So there's Crémant de Bourgogne, there's Crémant d'Alsace, and Limoux down in the south. So those are three areas if you're looking for things that you don't want to spend $60 on champagne all the time. I drink a lot of these three categories. Okay, so this first producer, you can make Crémant de Bourgogne. You've got a map, this handy dandy map, very colorful. They spent the extra 10 cents. We printed it in color, so everybody gets that. So you can make Crémant de Bourgogne from just about anywhere in Burgundy. Okay, Bourgogne just means Burgundy in French, if you're wondering about that. So this producer, though, is a little bit more special. So you'll see it's rosé. Okay, it's made out of 100% Pinot Noir. Mostly Crémant is made out of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, must be 30%. Then you can add Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, Gamay. So that's a way that Crémant is generally less expensive. You're not always making it with just Chardonnay and just Pinot Noir. But so what you have in your glass is something a little more special because it's 100% Pinot Noir. And they go out of their way to make it very, very special. It's made only in the Côte de Beaune and the Côte de Nuits, which when you're looking at this map, we'll get into it, which is the heart of what they call the Côte d'Or on your map, which is the heartland, which is the best area on the entire page. So that also makes it a little bit more special. They also leave it on the lees for 20 months instead of 12. So you're getting a little bit more aging out of it, and you can taste that. It's got a lot of strawberry, cherry. It's really kind of fruity and fresh, but you get a little more depth on the palate than you otherwise would if it weren't aged for that amount of time and it wasn't made out of all Pinot Noir. So I think very, very good. I've drank quite a few bottles of this, and it's great. Like, even if you're going to have a champagne night, start with something like this, then go to that. It's a great way to, or do it the other way. When your friends are too drunk, go to this, because, you know, at the end of the night, you want to have one more, but maybe you don't want that $75 bottle of champagne. So really cool category, lots to discover there, and look outside the region as well if you want. They make about 17.5 million bottles of Crémant de Bourgogne, so it's not small. You know, you think champagne is probably somewhere around 400 million bottles now. So you put it in context, it's still quite a lot being made out of a category that almost no one, till you sat down, probably knew anything about. So it's something to discover, and I think making things very, very nice. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Burgundy. I won't make it too technical. William said, don't make it too technical. You just ask questions. Stop me, ask a question if you have it. We'll do a little history. We'll do some facts. I'll mix in some food. Who's traveled to Burgundy, France? Anyone here? Okay. What a treat for you when you finally get to go to Burgundy, France. So it's one of those dreamlike areas that you go to in France, typical French areas, but wonderful food, wonderful wines. It looks pretty, and it's got a long, long history. So the Romans actually planted the vines, started with the Romans. Basically everywhere in France, it started with the Romans. And then after the fall of the Roman Empire, you had this just tribes running around trying to grab parcels of land, getting as many resources as they can for hundreds of years till you got to about 1100 or so, and you started getting this huge church influence. This area probably has more church influence than any other area in France. There was several abbeys there, the Cluny, the Citeaux, different religious orders, and they lived there for hundreds and hundreds of years. Alongside of them were all these dukes of Burgundy. So, this is before France was a formalized country, and a lot of other countries weren't formalized, and there weren't city-states. You basically just had these hamlets all over the place. So the dukes of Burgundy, with these monks, planted extensive vineyards. And the monks, they didn't have much to do, So, you do a lot of trial and error everywhere you go, and you figure out, oh, it grows really well here, but it doesn't grow well here. This grows better over here. And they figured it out as time went on where the best sections were. So this region, more than any other, has small, specialized parcels of land, all name controlled, that over 1,000 years, 1,500 years, they figured out, God, this is really, really good. And this is really good, and this is okay. And they've got it all formalized for you in a very complex system that you need to take some time to memorize, unfortunately. So we'll cover some of that today. So after the dukes basically got absorbed into what was France after Charlemagne, that was, I think, Louis XI or so, you started getting more attention from the French court. So if you look back at the literature, one of the things that really propelled this region as a huge wine region was it was the major wine served at the court at Versailles. So Louis XIV's doctor prescribed Burgundy, said, this is a health product. You need this instead of champagne or other things. And at the time, champagne wasn't sparkling wine. It was a region filled with red wine. So the court was filled with Burgundy, and that, again, lifted this region up. So when you think about why are these wines so special, you got all the time that's taken to figure out the parcels of land. You got so much involvement and so much attention paid. It has to turn out to be really good. And it is, and it turns out to be very expensive as well, unfortunately. So I think we'll probably pour the next wine. Or do you want me to let's do the fun facts. Does everybody have something to drink? So you'll get a better idea of what goes on with Burgundy. Is he going to be upset?
No, you'll have some good information.
Okay, this is a very disgusting looking pyramid. So tend to think of Burgundy like this. Okay, so you have four basic areas of Burgundy that we're going to talk about. The base of this pyramid, where most of the wine is produced, is what they call generic Burgundy. Okay? What they make in here is about 52% of all wine is produced in the base. And that's things that are labeled Bourgogne, Bourgogne Rouge, Bourgogne Blanc, Bourgogne Aligoté, Côte de Nuit Village, which we'll have tonight. And lumped into that in the generics, unfortunately, is areas like Mâconnais. If you like Chardonnay and you like white wine, this is an awesome area to explore for yourself. It's almost all produced with Chardonnay. You're not going to have any examples tonight, unfortunately, but this is a huge area, about 5,000 hectares of just Chardonnay. And generally, it's Chardonnay, not so oaked. It's very lively. It's minerally. It's fun. So I would explore this region. There's a lot of them in the shop to look at. Côte Chalonnaise is an area we will also not have tonight. Most of this is lumped into the generics. And then the things that I've mentioned, Bourgogne, which we will have one tonight. So that's 52% of what's produced in Burgundy. These are wines you can generally buy from anywhere, let's say, between $15 and $30, $35. Then you jump up to the village level. So things with a village name on the label, like Fairfield. You know, anything we talk about tonight, I'll mention the village. That's in this section right here. That's about 17% of the wine produced. I'm sorry, 37%. Then you get into the Premier Cru level, which is in here, and then you get to the top, which is the Grand Cru. So Grand Crus have their own appellation. You don't have to put the name of the village on the label. So again, extremely confusing for the consumer. This will have the village name. This will have the village name. It'll say Village Premier Cru with the name of the vineyard. And then this will just have the name of the vineyard. So they have their own appellations. So all of this is about 600 appellations, which as a consumer, you're like, oh my God, how am I going to learn all of this? That's why it's extremely confusing as you go along. All of this wine we're talking about, all of Burgundy that's on your map, is 3% of the wine produced in France. Only 3%. But it's extremely high quality wine. Okay? Burgundy makes about 25% of what Bordeaux makes. We all know Bordeaux. It's famous. They've got an entire PR machine all day long telling you how great the wines are, and they are great. Burgundy doesn't have that kind of PR machine or consortio, so you have to sort of figure it out for yourself through trial and error. But there's 2 times as many appellations in Burgundy than there is in Bordeaux. So it's, again, confusing for you as the consumer. I think let's pour the next one.
Pricing and all.
Okay, so I'm going to let Patrick talk about the pricing and... Oh, Jan, go ahead. Sorry.
Show the way, Bill.
I'm going to shut up now. And then if you have any questions, I will come back for a second.
So it's $19.99 and 12.5% alcohol.
So really well managed alcohol. We find that a lot.
That's the first one.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Images on the top of the grant.
Okay, the Grand Cru, I might have got lost in my own speech. I'm sorry. So the top percent here is 1%. So all the attention paid on the Grand Cru, everybody wants it. Nobody wants to pay for it. Everyone wants a rich friend with a bunch of them. So you go over their house. 1% of all the wine made in the entire region is in this top box. And the prices, unfortunately, they're high. You're going to pay sometimes $200, $300, $400, $500 a bottle or more. Unfortunately.
Tonight, right?
We will not be tasting one of those tonight. I wish we were, but we'll talk about them a little bit. But it's unfortunate that they're so expensive.
Oh yeah, right.
So we're going to move to Chablis, and then I'm going to come back and I'll talk about the land a little bit more in the Côte d'Or. So,
Bill, how big is for?
How do you define an appellation? What are the characteristics?
an appellation in the context of what we're talking about in Burgundy is a specialized piece of land.
So it's not even a vineyard necessarily.
It's sometimes not a vineyard, sometimes it's a town. You know, what's confusing about Burgundy is like, you know the AOC system in France. So everything is name controlled. It's now AOP. So you'll have a village designation. Each village will have one AOP. So like Gevrey-Chambertin will have one. The Gevrey-Chambertin Premier Cru will have one Premier Cru designation, and then they may have 30 different vineyards, but it's still only one designation. Then the Grand Cru, there's about 8 in Gevrey-Chambertin alone, has its own.
And that
So,
designation is the appellation.
correct. So for the Grand Cru, it's the parcel of land. For the Premier Cru, it's the Premier Cru, but it's appended with the parcel of land. For the AOC village, it's the entire village. It has to come from within the confines of the village.
How big geographically is Burgundy? Like,
If you drove, it's in the Côte d'Or. Let's just talk about the Côte d'Or, and we'll get into what they are. The Côte d'Or is 31 miles long itself, and we'll get into that a little bit, because when you think about Burgundy, everyone just thinks about the Côte d'Or, but there's a lot to explore. So we're going to talk briefly about Chablis. So I'm going to move to Chablis.
Just to
Go ahead.
emphasize the point, Bill, tell us the difference between these two wines, aside from the price, 9 and 250.
Okay, so I will get into this. I just will probably want to wait one moment to get into that. Is that okay? I will explain how to read the labels, which is extremely important. Yeah, you got a corkscrew? Open that up.
No corkscrew.
So we're going to move to Chablis. When you're on your map, it's in green. Okay, and Chablis is kind of off on its own, in its own little orbit, and it's very, very close to Champagne. It has a lot more similarity to Champagne than almost Burgundy. So I will talk a little bit about where things are in the travel as well, just in case you ever go. So if you were in Paris and you got in your car and you drove to Chablis, it'd take you about an hour and a half. It's not terribly far. You know, if you got on a train, it'd take you probably a little bit less. Okay, so Chablis is what's in the greater Paris basin, and Champagne is sort of in there as well. And these areas have a little bit more chalk in the soil with the limestone. A basin, just you think about the word, it was underwater. It was an ancient seabed at some point. So after the millennia of like these fish coming down, oyster shells, everything on the bottom, that's where the limestone came from. It's basically compacted dead sea life. That over time and pressure has created limestone. So this area, Chablis, world famous because they kind of bastardized the name. Everyone knows the name Chablis because if you're as old as I am, you remember jugs of Chablis from California and, you know, everywhere else in the world. They made Spanish Chablis. Everyone used the name, which you're not allowed to do anymore because of legal reasons. So Chablis itself has 4 appellations. The ones you should really know, and we'll talk a little bit about what makes Chablis special. There's Petit Chablis, there is Chablis, there's Chablis Premier Cru, and Chablis Grand Cru. So to get to your question before about the land, it's done by the land where it is, but the Grand Crus in Chablis confusingly don't have their own AOCs. It's just one AOC for Grand Cru Chablis. So you got this really cool soil. It's about at the northern limit of where you can ripen grapes. You're up near Champagne. You're up, you know, if you go across to Germany, you're at the northern limit. And it's all Chardonnay for Chablis. There's a couple other appellations that grow Sauvignon Blanc and other things like that. But when it says Chablis on the label, must be 100% Chardonnay. So what's this area is really known for? Can I have something? Thanks. Okay, so when you smell this wine, it has this smell of like wet wool, flint. You know, there's more than fruit here. When you smell a Chablis, it should always have that, and the flintiness comes from the soil, from this mixture of the limestone and the chalk, and this wet woolliness, the same thing. It's all coming from the soil. And it's coming from the fact that you're in the marginal climate. The alcohols are generally lower in Chablis. You won't get these 15%, you know, New World style Chardonnays. And it allows this soil to come out. They also tend not to use as much oak in Chablis. So almost everything is done in stainless steel or in older wood. There hasn't been this, you know, avant-garde movement to put it into new oak barrels and toast it up. Generally, the oak is subdued. They may use it to oxidize the wine, but not to give off oaky flavors. So that makes Chablis like you get all the character. It's a great summer drink. It's refreshing. It has great acidity because the climate's cool. It's a very cool climate. And then you get all these scents of flintiness and of these white fruits. I love drinking Chablis, and it's cool to say, too. Yeah, it's got this driving acidity. You want like some lobster or oysters or something like that, you know?
Good. Where are they?
Yeah.
So what are the tasting?
So I wrote down a couple other notes. I don't know if it's interesting or not, but I'll just share it. So Chablis, like, you think about how it became so popular, you know, and I always think about these things that have like an economics background. So it's on the Yonne River, like, and you're way up here, and Paris is about here, but the Yonne connects to the Seine. So they had this access to the Parisian market, and that's why all the Parisians drank Chablis, and that's how the English got it as well. So it became a really early favorite in England, and the Parisians were drinking it. So that's why, like, everyone knows Chablis and why people want to drink it, and why they bastardize the name in a lot of other places, unfortunately. There's about like 2,600 hectares here, so a lot of land, a lot of wine to be sold. Hectare, glad you asked this. If you read any like French literature, they like to use the word hectare, okay? And a hectare is 2.47 acres mathematically. What it used to be was the amount of land one man and a horse could plow in a day. So that's how they basically came out with what it's supposed to be. So if you're ever reading and it says, you know, 10 hectares, get out your iPhone and multiply it by 2.47, and it'll be in acres, and then we can all visualize what an acre is. So it's easier to understand. So a lot to be had there. Couple things about Chablis before we move on. So Chablis, Premier Cru Chablis, Grand Cru Chablis, all grown on this limestone chalk, not a lot of clay. There's wines in the shop labeled Petit Chablis. Okay, Petit Chablis is basically the outskirts of the appellation where there is more clay. So you can get Petit Chablis generally for about half the price of Chablis, maybe a third, depends on what it is and who's making it. But it's a great alternative if you want to spend a little bit less. You don't always want to spend $30, $40. You want one for $20, $25. Take a look at Petit Chablis. You'll get some of the same character as you will in this wine. Maybe not as driving acidity, maybe not as much soil, but it's a great alternative. There's nothing petite about it. It's an odd designation that they've come up with. So that's Chablis in a nutshell. This producer, Grand Roche, 1987 it was founded. And I think they're doing a really good job. They make this is the only wine you guys have though, right? Yeah, because they make a couple other things. If you ever see anything called Sombry, that's the Sauvignon Blanc appellation of Chablis. 100% done in stainless, so this producer uses no oak whatsoever on the wine.
How often do we see oak being used in Chablis?
You don't, when you get to like some producers, you will see them fermenting in stainless steel and then aging in oak. It's almost never new oak. Like even if you get things on the shelf like Dovisat, Bio Simon is another one you have. There's oak influence there, but it's not this toasty New World kind of oak. But you do see it, and mainly just to oxidize the wine a bit and for the élevage. But it's not meant to be an oaky type flavor. But you do see it as the wines get more expensive. A lot of the Chablis you see that are like 20 to 30. There's usually no oak influence whatsoever. Any questions about Chablis?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can go right. How does the clay affect the Petit Chablis on the outskirts? Like, what does that do to the profile of the wine generally?
That's a great question. It generally makes it heavier. It makes it fatter, and you don't get quite the acidity. She asked, like, with the Petit Chablis and the Portlandian soil on the outside, what's the difference? You don't get this driving acidity. It's a slightly fatter, slightly less race-driven and less soil tones, you know. But you can, yeah, it's creamy. Yeah, exactly. You'll get a little fatness, creaminess. You'll still get the character, and I don't know.
Does this one have clay, or is this one more limestone?
This is more limestone and chalk. There will be varying amounts of clay. One of the things where you get clay from is when the limestone breaks down. So there's always clay mixed in. You always see this argilo-calcaire name. That just means it's a mixture. Everything is kind of mixed up. But in these areas where Chablis is grown, it's like a core, and that's where the chalk and the limestone is. And around it is where more of the clay is found.
So we were talking, we had Jim Morrison here doing a Willamette class. And he started to talk about at the end of the Ice Age when the water, when the snow melted and it rushed down through the valley, and basically said the stuff up high is still big boulders and stony and rocky, and then at the end where sort of what you're talking about, these limestones, when it breaks all the way down, it's more easily moved by the water, by the when it rains or the weather, that kind of
Yeah, erosion.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it pushes it down, maybe lower on the hillsides or further down into the valley. Does that sort of make sense for this?
Yeah, there's no floods per se. It's just the sea receding. But yeah, the natural erosion, which is in all these wines in Burgundy, it's just mixing up the soils and making it more and more complex to try to just define it with one thing. I don't know if that answered your
No, I think
question or not.
I know we were talking about Del Ponte. We were talking about Mirto Del Ponte, and that the
Yeah.
Mirto is in that really clay-like soil, and you feel it on your palate.
Yeah, it's heavier. Yeah, you get a heavier, and it reduces the acidity of the wine.
Just to round out the soil conversation, so does the limestone make it more like singy, like fresh, is what you were saying earlier?
Yeah.
Is there any type of saltiness to this one too, due to?
I wouldn't argue that, but yeah, I mean,
Okay.
salinity, I guess, but yeah, I wouldn't say there isn't. Yeah, I think you could say that there is that in there. I mean, it's just the perception of wine is so like you might think it's a little salty and I might think it's this, but it doesn't mean there's no right answer really. It's like kind of a weird thing about wine and maybe food in general also. But yeah, I mean, it's been under the sea. Is it a little bit salty? Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Definitely savory, the wines, for sure.
Okay.
So that should, oh, go ahead.
Actually,
Yeah.
Back to like Burgundy versus Bordeaux what's the split between red and white? Feels like Bordeaux is more red heavy. Is this so far in your Burgundy discussion? We let off with white, but
I mean, if you take the area in general, there's a lot of white being grown in Burgundy. If you take the Côte d'Or, which we'll talk about, it's 20% white, 80% red. If you took the whole thing, I couldn't give you an exact number I'd be comfortable with, but all of Chablis is white, and all of Mâconnais is pretty much white. So when you run the numbers, it's probably a lot of white. Bordeaux probably makes more white than we think they do if you're including Entre de Mer and some of those areas. But yeah, I would agree. It's Bordeaux is maybe more red than
It
white.
feels more red.
Yeah.
At least in American.
Okay. This is $26.99 and 12.5%.
Okay, so let's get some cheese and bread on the table. We'll invite Matthew to tell us what's on the boards here. While you guys go ahead and put some on your plate. And then we'll come right back around William's favorite producers in Burgundy, especially in white Burgundy. It's brought in by Neil Rosenthal, one of our favorite importers.
Okay, so this wine is from the Côte d'Or. So a lot of times when you think about Burgundy, this is where everyone gravitates toward. The Côte d'Or means golden slope. So the name comes from in the autumn, all the leaves turn basically gold, and it's just a beautiful time to be there. So it's called the Côte d'Or. When you see the French word côte, it just means a hillside or slope. In this case, it means slope. So a lot of Burgundy, we haven't talked about the actual vineyards themselves. We talked about a little bit of the soil. So this whole area is basically east facing. It runs kind of north-south with maybe a little bit of a diagonal, and it's all perched on the side of this plateau called the Massif Central and the Morvan mountain range. So it's an escarpment basically on the side, and it all basically comes down and faces east. So on the slope, we talked a little bit about erosion. Where do you want to be on this kind of slope? Where is the best? Generally, it's in the middle. So when you think about the Grand Crus and the best of the Premier Crus, it's in the mid slope. The mid slope gets the best attention from the sun. You get the best angle, and it also has the best mixture of how much soil is there and where the best erosion is. At the top, there may not be enough topsoil. At the bottom, there's too much. So usually the drainage at the bottom won't be as good. You know, it's intuitive. So that's kind of where you may get higher yields, maybe not as much precision, but in the middle is where everything kind of comes together. Generally, and this is a generalization, you're at about 240 meters of elevation when you look at the mid slope. And that number fascinates me because when you start reading about elevations of great vineyards around the world, they're almost always in the mid 200s in meters. So for me, I'm just like, why is that? And I don't have an answer. I've just like, it's a question for me. So that's what the slope is. I want to talk briefly.
200s, is it just the terroir or the climate or both?
Could be the climate, could be where the perfect amount of, sunshine is versus the evening temperature. I don't know. It just happens at about 240. It's a strange thing, but
Could be a geological time also.
yeah, it could be geological. It's just, because you don't think of Burgundy being high elevation. When you're there, you're like, I don't feel like I'm up high, but that's generally where it is. So we're on to the Côte de Beaune. So we're in the Côte d'Or, the Golden Slope. It's separated into two different areas. Okay, it's the Côte de Nuits, which is in the north, which is a little bit more compact. It's hard to read on that map, isn't it? Is it? Okay. All right. Well, it's a little tighter, I guess, is what I want to say. Like the Côte de Nuits, it's like a little bit more compact. It comes down. The Côte de Beaune kind of spreads out a little bit, and you'll get villages off to the side. So the Côte de Nuits comes from the French noyer, means walnuts. The whole area used to be planted with walnut trees. So that's what the word means. I didn't actually tell you what Burgundy means, did I? So I was doing some reading about this because I like to just know where the words come from. It's actually one of these tribes. I mentioned earlier, like in the 500, 600, 700, all these tribes trying to steal all the land. One of the tribes was a derivation of the word Burgundy. And they were actually like this, like a tribe from an island off of Sweden, of all things. And they were used, and paid to be mercenaries and things like that. So that's where the word Burgundy comes from. Not a French word at all. It's related to this tribe from about 500. So the wine you're having now comes from the Côte de Beaune. So we're in the bottom section, which is, okay, it's still in the same color, whatever this maroony color is on the bottom. So you see the break there in the page where there's white. The northern part of that page, the upper part is the Côte de Nuits, and the southern section there on the bottom is the Côte de Beaune. So this is Bourgogne Blanc. So we talked about the base of the pyramid. It's in the generic category, which doesn't always sound good to us as Americans, but it's not pejorative at all. It's just that's the category that it's in. And Bourgogne Blanc is a great category. It's really a great introductory category to Burgundy. There's a lot of great whites and a lot of great reds. If I could just see the bottle. So we talked about reading the label. I probably want to cover that now, if that's okay. So Burgundy labels, they're assuming you already know something. So white wines in Burgundy, just think about it as Chardonnay. Can you grow something else? Yes, you can grow Pinot Gris, you can grow Pinot Blanc, you can grow Aligoté. But if it doesn't say anything on this label, assume it's Chardonnay. Okay? Almost everything is. Okay, for whites. For reds, it's all Pinot Noir. There's a little bit of Gamay grown in, I will cover it. Okay, the appellation, you asked about appellations before. The appellation on the bottle will always be the largest type. So when you're reading the label and it's confusing to you, the largest type is the appellation. So you'll notice that. I'll point it out later again as we go through other bottles. On the bottom is always going to be where the producer is. Okay? One of the big distinctions that is nice to know is the word domain. If it has the word domain, this one does not. You see, it just has the producer's name. If it has the word domain on it, it means they own the grapes. That's all the word means. It means it's grown by them, bottled by them, and usually that's a good sign. Doesn't necessarily mean it's better than anything else, but usually that's a good sign. So Jean-Marc Pio, he is a domain. He owns a lot of acres of land. But this particular bottling, he doesn't necessarily own the whole thing. You have to own 100% to put domain on the label. So one of the things that I like to point out is this is an absolutely great grower. If you look at him on the website, he'll make Chasson Montrachet. He'll make a Grand Cru. He'll make all these other wines besides Bourgogne Blanc. So you have his, what I would call the starter wine for the winery, but what you're getting is awesome winemaking. So I would always look, if you want an easy way to think about it, always look to a grower that you know makes a lot of great wines because you know the winemaking's great. And even if you don't want to spend the money up here one day, you buy something like this, it's going to be very pleasurable because the amount of care going into it is very high. So he's a producer in Chasson Montrachet. There's 3 major villages in the Côte de Beaune, again, highly confusing for white wines. Chasson Montrachet is one, Poligny Montrachet is another, and Meursault is the other, which we're going to have some Meursault later. So he's in Chasson Montrachet. He's 4th generation. One of these things we talk about in Burgundy is like it's always handed down. Like people don't like go off to finance school and then move to Paris. They stay. They usually, follow in the footsteps of their parents, and that's one of the things that makes Burgundy kind of unique. You'll find that a lot there. So we didn't actually. I'll talk about the parcels of land, I think, a little bit later. Let's talk about the wine quickly. So 100% Chardonnay. This is done in stainless steel. Some of it goes into some older oak for less than a year, just to give you that little bit of roundness there. Boy, that smells good. That smells really good. So, you get a little bit of the oak, but you're just getting like this minerally sensation from the wine. And then it's got this bright, almost white flowers and this kind of fruit to it. Boy, that smells good.
And you definitely pick up on that oak. I mean, that oak is in there, but it's so...
It's subtle. It's like moved into the wine. Like the élevage has been very, very well done on a wine like this.
In the United States, very often he's going to go ahead and enjoy a taste of this. In the United States, a lot of times in Chardonnay we see water. And on top, listen, there's a customer for it, and if that's what you like, drink it. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's butter. It's weighty. What they're trying to do, what they want to do in France, and especially a great winemaker like this, is that they almost don't want you to know that they were in there, but their signature is all over. So they're not trying to manipulate these things. They're trying to let the fruit speak and the process speak, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think it's just delightful. It's delightful to drink. And like the best bottles I've ever had in my life are Burgundies. And as you get more into this region, I think it's going to be the same for you. And there's just something like we could sit here and talk about the soil and the oak and the winemaker and this parcel, but there's something that's just it's beyond that. There's something almost that's just pure magic about Burgundy that you can't explain. Like you drink it and it's just, whether you know a little bit or you know a lot, you just know how good it is. It just tastes great. And that's what makes Burgundy so exciting to drink. It's just almost magic, these wines.
Yeah.
I like drinking that a lot. That's just delicious wine.
You got questions?
Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Does this producer make any Pinot?
This producer does make some red wines. So Chasson Montrachet as a village is an oddity. It makes 40% red, 60% white. So there is some Pinot that he makes from Chasson Montrachet. May make a Santenay, I think, as well.
I think
And he probably makes a Bourgogne Rouge, but I think you only stock the whites. I don't know.
Right now,
Yeah.
as I started to say, William loves him as a producer.
Yeah.
But he loves him as a producer twice.
Yeah.
He has had, we have had some of the reds too, but generally he's sort of salivating that the next vintage of Chasson and Montrachet are coming out. And oh, by the way, the Bourgogne is in there too. Can't get enough of that.
One of the things you have to come to grips with on wines like this is he makes 2,400 bottles. So you think that this particular wine, he makes 2,400 bottles for the entire world. So the fact that it has found its way to Fairfield, Connecticut, it's like, wow, okay. You know, the guy makes 60,000 bottles total. So that's the thing about these Burgundy domains. They're very small, highly parcellated. They may make 8, 10 different wines, but they just don't make a lot of them. They make small amounts. So if you like something and you see it, you got to snap it up because it'll be gone.
So the second question was, you mentioned domain and what that requires. Chateau, is there? You see that a lot as well.
You
Is that just a house, family, or
Yeah, I mean, you generally won't. I don't see the word chateau a lot in Burgundy. Pretty much, you may see like Chateau de Grancey or something that's been in the family for a long time. There's a Chateau de Pommard. It's usually associated with the house on the piece of land instead of the parcel of land, and it may be the name of the winery as well. But I don't think it denotes that they own the land. I'm not certain, but I don't think so. Any other questions about Pio and the Bourgogne
I have a
Blanc?
question. You used a word that started with an E, it's on French, entourage or something, about the winemaking process as you were tasting this wine. I was just curious what that.
Okay, yeah. So élevage in French is the bringing up of the wine. So everything involved with the bringing up of the wine, putting it into the barrel, clarifying it, racking it into another barrel, finally bottling it. That is the élevage. And depending on the wine, could take anywhere from 8 months to 24 months, something like that.
What about personal domains? I mean, is it better that like they're vertically integrated in terms of like both producing grapes and producing and create the wine after you harvest the grapes, or is it better to like self-select in terms of what's there to be able to produce the wine?
Is it better that they own the vineyards? Generally, I think so. I mean, you're controlling your own viticulture at that point. You're not buying grapes. You know, the source is the same. You're controlling it. You know, when you're buying grapes on the open market or juice, you're not always getting the same thing. And I mean, that's another discussion of these courtiers. There's people that have an entire profession of hooking you up with her, you know, and you have grapes and she wants grapes, and there's an entire profession around that. But I think when you're dealing with a family that every day goes out, checks the, you know, I think you're better off, you know.
I think the importer also makes a big difference.
Yes.
Because he has a lot of influence over that division.
Yes. You see something like Rosenthal on the back label, that's a good sign. Yeah.
Jim, what do we got?
$41.99 and 13%.
See, that's relatively low to me. 13%. If this were California, it'd be over that.
Yeah, it would be 14.
And it has the creaminess. I mean, it's got the richness to it.
Goes really well with the soft cheese that they're
I'm
serving.
sure that
Yeah.
it does,
Yeah.
Very good. So if we got a little bit of soft cheese.
Does it matter if
And that's
that
not
comes
a
at
really
like the
good
start of the fermentation
for
or the end of it? Like
Usually it will stay in oak the whole time. It'll stay in oak from when it's been fermented, either in stainless steel or in the barrel, and it will stay in oak for the whole élevage.
But it'll never do both stainless steel and oak.
Yes, you can ferment in stainless and then move it into the oak.
Oh, does it?
He said with the year.
Oh,
Yeah, a lot of
and it
people
doesn't
ferment
matter.
in stainless, move it into the oak, because it's easier to control the fermentation in the stainless.
the initial fermentation, right?
Yeah, the alcoholic fermentation. Okay, so we We're on to Merceau. Great.
Okay. And we continue to climb the ladder. Yes, correct. Yes, now, we're not getting here, Brian. I ain't happy. But there is a class for that.
So, Bill, flavor-wise, what would be the biggest difference between this complexity between
These two wines? Okay, so on these two wines, another thing that's just, I think you've got the lay of the land now. So you know that this is a village wine. It just has the name of the village on the label. Okay, this one says Premier Cru. Okay, it also gives you the name of the specific vineyard that it comes from. So you're expecting as a consumer for this wine to be a giant step up from this wine. It should have fuller bodied, it should be more complex, it should have more oak aging, it should just be more of each thing along the way. Is that always the case? No. Okay, one of the pitfalls of Burgundy is it's all about the producer. So when you find something you really like you're like, you know, I really love Pouligny Montrachet. You got to do just a little research. Who are the top 5, 8 growers in the village? And then you go after those, because you could get a Premier Cru or Grand Cru from someone who may not make the best wine, and somebody's village wine may be better than that Premier Cru or Grand Cru. So that's one of the pitfalls in Burgundy. You have to do a little research or go see someone like William or Patrick and ask the questions, and they will provide the right answers for you, because you can spend a lot of money being disappointed with Burgundy, or you can spend a lot of money and not be disappointed. It's all up to you as the consumer. Be an educated consumer. When you have a great wine merchant, that's helping you so much avoid these costly mistakes.
And in that vein, Jean-Marc Pilot, his very base wine that we just tasted, is probably as good as many people's village wines, next level.
Yes, I mean that wine is very good. That wine is very good.
Hard to compare it to these when you get somebody like Domaine Flair.
Yeah, I mean this is you know,
We just sort of bowed at
yeah,
wine.
these
Hope
wines,
that someday we can taste.
you know, have some rich friends.
What's the follow-up question? You made a comment that in Burgundy so much is about producer. What about Burgundy makes that more true than other regions? Do I think that'd be true universally? Is it more that like the grapes themselves are a little bit more blank palette for people to work with? Like, I guess the core of the question is why is that more true in Burgundy than elsewhere?
I mean that's a fair question. I think it's just more complex in Burgundy. I think it's so parcellated, which we didn't get into this parcelization yet, but I will. It's like people have, you might own this row. You know what I mean? It's like, so this row may not be as good as those rows over there, whereas some other winery may own the whole vineyard. You know, in like an area like Sancerre, you may own all of this. So it's to me, it's not as parcellated, which probably leads it to be more variable. But I will talk about the parcelization a little bit, because that's another complex issue.
$650 between those two.
Very good questions from these two. Not so much down here, better questions over here. So we are on to Merceau. Okay, Merceau, a somewhat large village, okay, in the sense that they've got, you know, bars, restaurants. This is, you know, country France, but it's an actual village. Okay, so they make a fair amount of wine in Merceau. It's very nice to say. The wines, do I have that wine? Okay, what they say about Merceau is noisette et beurre. Everything, it's hazelnuts and butter. So Merceau, generally, when you smell it, it's super sexy and attractive. It's like got hazelnuts, butter, all this fruit. It's like, it really kind of gets you going. So let's see if this one has that. Yeah, this is pretty attractive wine. Yeah, so you see the last one, it was like we loved the last one, then you smell this and you're like, ooh, it's a huge step up. You know, it is probably double the price. It may be double the price, the wine, but I mean, at some point, price is irrelevant. It's just like, oh my God, it's great wine. So Meursault doesn't have any Grand Cru vineyards, so they only make Premier Cru wine and village wine in Meursault. So there's a lot of village wine in Meursault that's extremely good. So if you're looking to spend in this range or a little less and you want to buy a village wine, Meursault is a good place to look. Pouligny-Montrachet, its neighbor, it's harder to find village wines at affordable prices. They're generally more expensive. Chassagne you will find, but I'll explain the differences. I'll just do it right now. So generally, Meursault is probably one of the sexiest of the three, if you want to just say that, if I'm allowed to say words like that. And then Chassagne, they always say it's more manly, which we can't say anymore either. It's more robust. It's kind of more sturdy. The wines are more rigid. And then Pouligny-Montrachet is kind of the laciest, the prettiest of the three. It's just lovely, lovely wine. So each to his own. They all have great attributes, and they should all be, you should look into each of them and try some wines from each of the villages. But the Meursault just gives it to you right in the nose. It's nice and rich. It's just delicious. One of my early food pairings with this was surprisingly buttered popcorn, which, you think, God, I have to have some gourmet meal. But sitting down with like a bowl of buttered popcorn and a Meursault was so awesome when I was with Amy. We just drank Meursault and watched a movie and ate popcorn. I was like, God, this is great. Yeah.
When it's right, it's just
Sneak it into the
this one with the soft cheese again.
Yeah.
Really special.
Yeah, it's rich. It's a nice wine.
We're gonna have just a
This guy, I wrote down this cool fact because we talk about the price of the wines. To buy an acre of land in this village, 1 acre, is 1.5 million euros. 1.5 million euros to buy 1 acre of land in Meursault. So when you think about, God, the wines are expensive, you're like, oh, there's a reason of what's behind what's going on here.
And a lot of that's true just generally, right? Around the wine world. The price of a bottle of wine has an awful lot to do with
the price of the land. Yeah.
You're growing it. We talk about, and I know it's sort of going off a little bit, but like Roederer Estate from Burgundy, France, is compared to Anderson Valley in California. The quality of the wine is very similar, right? But one of them is twice as expensive as the other.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, the price of vineyard land in Champagne is also skyrocketed. It's crazy,
About that. I mean, with particularly in France, I mean, if majority of stuff is being passed down, how often, like in Burgundy, how often is land for sale? Like, is anything open for sale, or is it just like, here I'm selling this land that's already been produced for a winery? This is how much it costs per acre? Or is there any open land
This is a very complex subject that basically these deals, if there was something for sale and you didn't know the people, you would never even know about it. It would be done behind your back. You wouldn't even know. It's you got to be on the in, and things rarely come up for sale. And, unless you somehow have a disgusting amount of money. So I want to just talk about, everyone's got wine, right? So, and our timing's good?
Follow up to that.
Yeah.
Follow up to that. Do they allow foreigners to buy land?
I'm sure if you have the money, you could probably buy. I don't know the exact answer. But there's a lot of Americans, there's this movement now of like, if you read about it, some Americans moving there because we mentioned these courtiers or go-betweens where you can buy grapes. You can make wine without owning anything. You can go there, you can rent a warehouse, get some barrels. I'm going to, get a courtier because it all has to be done this way. So if you were a courtier and I said, I want grapes in Pouligny-Montrachet, and you knew this gentleman over here, you'd go talk to him, you'd arrange a price, you'd come back and tell me the price. If I was okay with it, I'd buy it. You make 2%, and we do the exchange. And that's how it basically works to buy grapes in Burgundy. So you can go over there and do it without buying anything, which is kind of what's been happening lately. There's several people going over. Alex Gamble, if you see that label, Olivier Bernstein, there's people that are doing it, so it can be done. But one of the things, to get to your question, is going back to, the French Revolution. I started to talk about like Louis XIV and the wines getting popular at court. One of the things that came about from that was this merchant class, okay? And then you had the French Revolution. So they killed all the aristocrats and the nobles, and they took everything. So who had the money to buy anything when it went up for Bien National? The merchant class. So everything changed, and the merchant class bought everything. And then Napoleon came along and created the Napoleonic Code. And if you don't remember anything about Napoleon, after all the wars and everything, is what he did for the bureaucracy of France. So he made the Napoleonic Code, which said every child needs to inherit equal amounts from the family. So the two of you are siblings, I die, you get the domain equally. So then it's now split from 1 to 2. You guys have families. You pass off. Now it gets split this way. So this is another reason all the Burgundy vineyards are so tiny and people own rows of vines, is because it's been split and split and split. And the only way to get it back is for you to marry somebody else and you pull the vineyards, or you make some kind of arrangement with a sale and make a company. So no one sells the vineyards. These guys are, they're rich, but they're still peasants. You know what I mean? Like, no one sells land in Europe easily. Like farmers in Italy and France, nobody wants to get rid of land. So it's hard to see it going up for sale a lot. And that's why you sort of have to know somebody. But it gets super complex as you go along. There's a story about Clos Vougeot. Is our time okay? So Clos Vougeot, if you went back, like I talked about the church and them, planting vineyards and setting it up. There's an area in Burgundy, if you look at it online, called Clos Vougeot. So there was an abbey there, and they had this huge vineyard in the village of Vougeot. You see the word clos, C-L-O-S, it just means it's enclosed by a wall. So that's what that word means on any French label. So this abbey owned this huge vineyard of land. Let's say it's 125 hectares, something like that. And they knew like the top was better than the middle and the bottom. So the top went to the Pope. They'd actually make the wine in the abbey, send it off to the Vatican. And the middle section would go to the bishops around the countryside, and the bottom section would be used at Mass locally. So after the revolution, goodbye to their land. It's been taken, resold. So now you've got this huge swath of land, and then over time, from about the 1790s to now, there's over 100 people that now own a section of this vineyard. And that is an example of what happens in Burgundy and why it's so complex, and why this guy may make 300 bottles of wine because that's all he has, or he ends up selling the grapes because he doesn't have enough to a negociant, which we didn't get into yet as another topic. So we're on
Is it
to
complex? Is Burgundy complex?
I need numbers on this.
And,
numbers. Okay. Is my time all right?
yeah, you do.
I'm talking too much.
You said
Go ahead.
merchant class, is that coffee,
So it's $79.99.
Probably at that time, yeah, they may have been aristocrats.
Okay, and then there's.
What is the act cost?
13.
The other thing I was going to ask you about, just on the land side, I mean, just give me some context, 25 million per acre, and
1.5 million euros for an acre in Merceau.
1.5.
1.5.
Oh, I thought you said 25.
No, 1.5.
Oh, okay. Well, what is
You
that?
want some?
I got a bridge in Brooklyn. Okay. But like, how does that compare to like Napa? How does that compare to like Spain? Like, I don't know.
It's a lot. It's way more than Napa. It's you're never going to make your money back. I mean, it's basically you buy it to pass on to the children, and Yeah, and it's just you finance it over lifetimes instead of one. Yeah.
Bill, can I ask you a question just in general? What about the age of a vine?
Yeah.
And the impact on the quality. Is older always better? Is there a sweet spot? And is at some point that you have to take your ones out?
Yeah. The question is like talking about vine age and how important is vine age. So Burgundy, a lot of it is somewhere in this 40, 45-year-old sweet spot. So why is that? I mean, you get diseases, you get other pressure, but in the beginning, like for some reason, young kids have lots of energy and it's great. When you plant the vine, you have to wait 3 years, but 3 and 10 makes great wine. Like somehow there's this like area when the vines are super young, they make really great wine. Then they make good wine, and then you wait till they're like 30, 40, 50 years old and they make great wine again. So why is that? I don't know. I don't have a degree in that, but it's just the way the plant is, and probably the way you cultivate the plant as well. But yeah, about 40 years is the sweet spot in a lot of what we're talking about today. Yeah.
And then they do end up, a lot of places end up pulling up those wines.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
When they get out to 70, 60, 70, 80 years old. And a lot of the reason for that is they're just not producing.
They're not produced, not economically feasible. When you need to make, I need to make,
And that can be 5 years away.
this amount of money to pay the bank, if you need to pay the bank. So we are, are we on the red wines?
We were up in here with white Burgundy and in Merceau, and now we're moving over to red, and we're going to take basically the same journey again with red. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So we've moved back. We're
going to go back down.
We're actually in the Côte de Beaune. We're still in the Côte de Beaune. Okay. So this is a wine called Haute Côte de Beaune. Okay. So we talked about the generic category. This would fit into the generic category, but it's hyphenated. So you'll see it's Bourgogne Haute Côte de Beaune. Okay, and that just means high hills of bone. So there's also a Bourgogne Haute Côte de Nuit, which just means the high hills of Nuit. So we talked about the plateau and this escarpment of vineyards. If you go onto the plateau, it's not, like Madrid, it's hilly. So that's where this Haute Côte is. So as Burgundy has become more fashionable again and people want to buy Burgundy, they're planting more vineyards in these areas. Historically, there were a lot of vineyards in these areas. After phylloxera, they didn't necessarily replant, but you're seeing a lot of activity here again. This is prime hunting ground for Burgundy values. So you generally get really, really good wine in the Haute Côte, and you don't pay that much for it. So I would look into this area a lot for wines.
Show us the back label again.
So this is Rosenthal again. So that's another, if you're looking at the shelf and you're wondering, turn it around, if it's Rosenthal, if it's, Kermit Lynch is another great example.
That's the importer.
You can pass it around if you want to see the bottle. Dresner be another great example. Even Skurnik, which imports a lot of their own wine, be another really good example. Not always a guarantee, but
are there importers that you generally prefer, or do they just import so much that it doesn't really matter?
Rosenthal is going to be a good one to go to. Kermit Lynch doesn't have as many Burgundy holdings, but Rosenthal has a lot. There was a company called Seagram Chateau and Estates, which sometimes you see their wines are now, somebody has Seagram Chateau and Estates morphed into something else that you see wine from. I don't know. I'd have to get back to you. But and there's just other. Wilson Daniels is the people that bring this in, and they bring in some pretty high end, really good Burgundies as well. Another avenue to look into. So this guy is in Pernon-Vergelès. So one of the things about Burgundy is you may be a vintner in a village, but you'll make wine from other villages. And you don't necessarily make the best wine from the village you live in. You just have to put it in there, and you put the butter, parsley in there, put it in the oven. It's delicious. Goes perfectly with these wines. These wines like mushrooms. So even if you don't want something so heavy, get yourself a really nice roast chicken, like a high quality one. Get some wild mushrooms. Goes great pairing with all of these wines. Lamb is another really good one. Beef bourguignon, everyone has heard about that. That comes from this region. Better to eat in the winter, but again, perfect complement to these types of wines. Any questions?
So that was good.
You had filet with this?
That looked good.
Not with this, but we did. Jason went out foraging.
Oh.
Crazy Jason. Jason! He went out foraging mushrooms, and he came back. He walked in the other night, and he had this cotton cloth bag hanging over his shoulder. It was big and puffy, and he came in and he said, "If I got something for you," and I mean, like this, and then he came over and just dumped these chanterelles.
Wow.
Oh my God! It was.
My phone didn't ring.
He's going back out. He said there's still about 20.
Oh, that's credible.
What did he go for?
North Haven somewhere. He was. These guys. These guys
Like their
that do
favorite
this.
fishing hole,
You'd have to kill him or torture him, which I wouldn't mind doing. And then Laura did some quick ricotta toast. And he says he's coming back for more.
That sounds terrific. Even just the mushrooms with the wine would be perfect without even the meat.
Yeah.
So we're about to leave the Haute Côte de Beaune. We're going to come back one more time. But we talked about Côte de Nuit was the walnuts. Côte de Beaune is named after the city of Beaune, which you'll see on your map. That is the commercial and the heart of the entire region. It's about 20,000 inhabitants in Beaune. And to give you an idea of the culture and the food and everything, there's never been a McDonald's in the town of Beaune ever. It's just not allowed. So it's a beautiful, beautiful medieval town. And there's this old hospital there. We talked a little bit about the Dukes of Burgundy. There was a chancellor who was the tax collector who was a really bad guy called Nicolas Roland. And he basically extorted a lot of money. And to make his life better at the end and to get into heaven, he donated a lot of money to make this beautiful hospital there called the Hotel Dieu. And you'll see it like when you go to Beaune, the tiled roof is this gorgeous yellow and like almost azure blue roof. It's stunning. And it's like a hospital that goes back to the 1400s. So if you go there, you must go there and have a visit. It's absolutely terrific place. Yeah, there's like stained glass of him in there and a bunch of other cronies that wanted to make sure they got into heaven at the
I
end.
usually try not to visit hospitals, especially when I'm traveling.
Well, it's not an active hospital anymore. It's just a museum now, but it's a lovely, lovely place to go. You have to go to Beaune if you visit. So, any questions before we move from the Côte de Beaune?
Yeah, price and alcohol.
Price and alcohol.
So it is $39.99 and 13.5.
Okay, so I'm going to do my best with this. You may be able to add a layer to it, but this is the wine. This is the wine that I did with that filet with the chanterelles. This is DRC's other property. So if you know DRC, Domaine Romani Conti, perhaps the top vineyard in Burgundy has got another property. This is that property. We were fortunate to be able to get a few cases of this, Susan.
Yeah, I'm like,
We opened it the other night. It never stopped going. It was really, it's a great bottle. We don't have much of it. And William put this on sale. It's $70 for $90.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool opportunity if you want to get it. I think I've got about a case and a half. There's not very much of it to be had. It's a great price, and it's a really special wine. And if you
We almost were going to have it tonight, but we weren't sure.
It just isn't enough.
It takes you. This is Cote Chalonnaise. So when you're looking at your sheet, you're now in the purple area. Okay, so
This thing, to do a tasting pour like what we're doing tonight, 2 or 3 ounces of it, you can't get to this mark doing it.
yeah,
You just can't. Some of the other ones that we're about to get to, you can't really get to them. You get the hint of them, but when we taste this over the course of about, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, or whatever it was that it was open, every sip was different from the previous one. And talk about great winemakers, their ability on that kind of thing.
yeah. This actually transcends the whole appellation and the category. So, do you know DRC? Are you familiar with? So, Domaine della Romane Conte is the most celebrated, famous winery in the entire area, maybe the world. Okay, and they own in the village of Vone Romane, which we're going to have at the end, which we decided to have the Vone instead of this, which I think you'll be happy about, but we'll see. So in that village of Vone Romane, which is the best place for Pinot Noir on the planet probably, they own the best domain and they own the lion's share of the best vineyards. So throughout time, they make just incredible, incredible wine. But they make it a little bit differently than some other people. One thing we haven't talked about is whole cluster fermentation, which is maybe a little technical, but you have the bunch of grapes and you have the stems. Almost everyone takes the stems off and uses only the berries. This winery and Aubert de Villaine, for this winery as well as DRC, uses the stems, and it makes the wine very different. It makes the wine bigger, richer, more powerful, tannic. So the fact that he had that with a fillet with wild mushrooms, kudo to him. It'll stand up to it, and some parsnips. So it's also the way it's being made and the pedigree of who's making it that is making the wine so special. So $70 for that, or $5,000 for a bottle of Romane Conte. I know it's a tough call. Anyway. So we're going to move to the Côte de Nuit. So the Côte de Nuit is the northern maroonish, whatever color that is on the map.
Red.
Is it red?
Red.
Deep red, like my shirt. So Côte de Nuit is celebrated as probably the best place for Pinot Noir to be grown on the planet. Côte de Nuit. So the Côte de Nuit. Oh, wait a second.
I don't know wine enough.
Somebody was, you were grilling back. We had it last night.
What's that?
While they were.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, so I didn't get the invite on that one. I sat at home. I saw it go up on the stores. I was not working that year. And I was like, guys, how about a little shot? How about a text to let me know that you're doing this stuff?
You give them the invite for the filet and the.
That's probably fair.
But that was cool that they were doing it back there.
Yeah.
Thank you,
They were
sir.
trying the different beers.
There's a series that we've done once or twice here that sort of exemplifies having a good relationship
I got it.
with other businesses around and the people that you work with and next to. And that is a series where it's called Knock at the Window. And we just did it the other day, right?
Yeah.
Matt, well, you weren't here, but we had a winemaker in and we start talking about something. And you're like, well, these guys. You tap on one, you're like, come on over. And then Matt will come over and he'll say, yeah, this is really good. And the next thing you know, there's a cheese or there's sausage and there's some other things that come over. So there's this relationship that happens. It's not by accident, but it is really based on the idea that we're neighbors, or that we got a French bakery down the road, or we've got a
Custom meats.
custom meats down the road, or you've got the Nordic or Gruel, or we're surrounded by it.
Right.
So we get these really cool opportunities. We've started sending Renzo out on the road and saying, go find the best lobster roll, go find the best egg and cheese sandwich. Go find the best this and that. And so so they start running around town and doing that. But those are all for future stuff for us. And then we'll go, the Italian kitchen. Give Dominic a call and have him come over with some stuff and let's taste these wines with what they're doing. That's what you want. Those are okay. Sorry.
Okay, no, it's great. So we have moved to the Côte de Nuit. So that's the top portion there of your map. This section of vineyard here stretches from Dijon, which is a pretty modern cosmopolitan town, down through Nuits-Saint-Georges. This is really, what to a lot of people is the heartland of Pinot Noir in Burgundy. So the character of these wines is very different than the Côte de Beaune. So you'll notice even from a wine like this, these wines tend to be earthier, spicier, meaty, darker. They often smell like smoked meat or game. There's a barnyard, someone said. There's also a barnyardy character, which could be slight Brett, but it's in the wines. Different than the Côte de Beaune reds, which we had one of, which tends to be fruitier, more supple, red fruits, could be some spice, but more gentle wines in the Côte de Beaune than in the Côte de Nuit. These also tend to have more structure. They're more tannic, they last longer, they age longer. This entire stretch, Côte de Nuit, is almost 100% Pinot Noir. There's a few outliers, but there's very little white wine made in the Côte de Nuit. So this is an appellation called Côte de Nuit Village, which is an oddity in itself. So you can make Côte de Nuit Village either in the very top, around the town of Gevrey-Chambertin, if you see it on your map. There's an area called Brochon and Marcenay. You can make it there, or you go all the way down to Nuits-Saint-Georges, and you can make it in a town called Comblancion or Courgouloin. So those are basically where this comes from. It doesn't come from anywhere. It comes from those specific regions. So Gevrey-Chambertin and Nuits-Saint-Georges make structured, fuller-bodied wines from Pinot, and this is like a junior version of those. It's, to me, very spicy and a little bit smoky and got a lot to it. It's earthy, and it has a little bit of a tannic edge to it.
Is there any way to tell which one it's from?
This one I know is from Courgouloin because I looked it up. It's on the website.
Really good with the hard cheese.
Yeah.
I tried it with the hard cheese.
And so this is a 6th generation winery, and it's only been run by women. So that is an oddity in itself. Let me tell you, in a macho world like Burgundy, you see more and more daughters taking over, but in the past, that wasn't always true. We're now 6 generations of females running this winery. So they do make Nuits-Saint-Georges. They make this, and I think they make a couple Bourgogne Rouges as well.
Would you decant this?
I probably would, and I this needs some food. I think you need like a little bit of the cheese, or some kind of meat would do it well. It's definitely got a little structure. This has a lot of substance, though. It's rich. It has a more power than that Côte de Beaune did.
Oh, yeah.
And the finish, it goes through that. The tannic, the finish carries on. It's darker. It's like if you were going to have a beef bourguignon, I'd have a bottle of this. Which, what's the name of that chef? Ina Gartner, is that her name? She's got a really good recipe in her book about Paris, which doesn't take 4 hours to make, because that's one of the problems with beef bourguignon. And I would look up the recipe, because I've made it 3 times now, and you could make it in about 2.5 hours with this recipe.
She's
coming to Harvard in December.
Is she coming to Hartford? Yeah, she's cool. I'd like to meet her.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this wine. Very, very good. I really like this wine.
That we're just gonna be promotional? I didn't know they gave us that yet.
So we tried to find an overtly, port wine, we just don't have one. The ones that we wanted, I thought I'd get one that you could smell.
We had a cork one.
Yeah, but it's so mild,
Oh.
you'll never pick up on it. So, it's interesting. Earlier tonight, one of the things that we do before we do the class is we open all the wines and we taste through them to make sure that we don't have any wines that are what we call cork. And tonight we found one white and we found one red that were flawed, but they were not corked. Or one was corked, but it was really mild. So you might, at times, as you're having a bottle of wine, just go, tend to remember this wine tasted better. And there is a certain percentage in the wine world that are cork tainted. They are, the wine itself is affected by the cork that they use to close the bottle. And in the most obvious circumstances, the smell of a corked wine is, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dirty, wet socks, it's a cellar, newspapers. Once you've smelled the smell one time, once you've ingrained it in your head, you'll pick it up in any one. It doesn't make any difference if it's a white, a red, or rosé. That doesn't make any difference. The smell is the same and you'll go to it every time. What we found tonight when we were going through, we're not overtly corked wines. So if I pass them around the table, you can smell me. It's like, yeah, he's nuts.
So what do you do if you buy a bottle of wine that's corked?
You bring it back to me. I get my money back, and then I make Bill give me my money back
Whether we buy it from you or not.
that I paid.
Watch this guy. Watch him.
I told you. I did.
So why not use synthetic?
They are using more synthetic colors. What's that?
Trend is towards that.
There are some there, and I'll answer it, and if you want to answer it, feel free to. But there is a certain amount of oxygen that gets through a cork and helps the wine to age over time. So a lot of these wines that are age-worthy don't want to use those things for a couple of different reasons. But one of those is it affects the aging process. A while back, New Zealand, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, New Zealand let us down. The screw cap closures has the same sort of problem. And Frog's Leaf, a California winery, did an experiment where they did the same exact wine, and in one they closed it with a cork, and in one they closed it with a screw cap. And over the course of a few years, there was not any discernible difference. And so they said, well, it doesn't really make any difference. That's been argued back and forth. You can pick a side on that argument. But don't be afraid of wines that have a screw cap on them. Most of the wines that we take them home to drink them tonight. You will not hear that sound when you open up something with a screw cap. But you can do it yourself if you want to. But the quality of the wine will be virtually the same. Over a long period of time of aging, there is some, or like, we believe that there's some difference in it. And those
That's it, that was it.
synthetic corks. You ever try to hold one of those? Yeah, so some people have gone to those things, and then you guys come back to me like, I corked the bottle, and say to me, what are you doing? And it's like, I'll make them, I'll give them a phone call and let them know. But there is tradition in there, and there's also probably some reality to using cork in aging. Is that fair?
Yeah, and some of it's tradition in Burgundy. You're not going to change their minds, and a lot of it is highly regulated. You're not allowed to. You can't use screw caps. You can't do these things, even if you wanted to. You know,
And Burgundy is probably
it's really steeped in tradition, and it's going to be tough. I like screw caps. You
What's
know,
that?
I'm fine with screw caps.
So am I.
Yeah.
I was not when they came out. I wasn't. I was okay with them with New Zealand Sauvignon.
With white,
Oh, and red wine.
Yeah.
with white, okay.
Yeah. We're taking it home and drinking it tonight. What's the difference?
If you're going to drink it soon, screw caps are fine.
Right, right.
And we had a friend named Danny, the Dietz. He used to say, you don't want to be messing around at 1 a.m. looking for a corkscrew. So screw caps are fine.
Always been within arm's reach.
At 1 o'clock in the morning, when you would be searching around for them, it's better to have a screw cap.
Better to have a screw cap. And you could reseal it if you don't finish it.
That's exactly right.
So what do we have on this?
Always have a corkscrew.
Oh, the numbers.
So we're
Swiss Army is it?
$33.99. It's 13.5.
Yeah, I think that's well priced. That's a nice wine. Yeah.
Stuck right where it should. And prettier style, right? Some coke in the reed.
Yeah.
I think it's authentic. Really a nice wine. Needs a little food.
Well, right up here.
Yeah, I didn't have any. I'll have some at the end. Okay, so coming around now is a wine by Louis Jadot. So we have talked briefly about the growers and the small plots of land. We haven't talked about the negociants. So one of the things that has made this region stable for a long time is the fact that a lot of people didn't domain bottle the wine and they sold the grapes to what are called negociants. And negociants would buy your grapes, ferment the wine themselves, bottle the wine themselves, commercialize it, and sell it. And that, for a great number of years, was most people's experience with Burgundy. Okay, there weren't a lot of independent growers until about 30, maybe 40 years ago. So this negociant goes back to the 1850s, to give you an idea. And there's negociants that go back to the 1700s that are still operating. So if you're like a restaurateur or a store and you don't want like 24 bottles of something, you want to have the same wine all the time, that's where the negociants were able to fill this need. And most of people's experience about Burgundy was only negociants until there was this group of people that said, you know, I'm going to break away. I'm going to start to, bottle my own wines. And they had to finance it because you couldn't get your money back next year. You had to keep it in barrel, then you had to bottle it, then you had to get someone to go sell it. So it was an endeavor, like 4 or 5 year process to really start to get your money back, and you had to be able to invest in it. So there were a group of like really big names, Dangerville, Gouge, people like that started to do it, and then they were backed by this younger set. And now it's more common than ever to see the domain on the label. These independent growers, like we're trying the Doré and PO, those things, they just didn't exist 80 years ago. So this is good for you as a consumer because now you've got multiple people to get wines from. So the negociants, they're smart people. They kind of saw what was going on. So people like Jadot started buying vineyards. So Jadot, can I see that? You will notice a negociant like Jadot, which everybody knows because they make a lot of wine under a lot of different appellations. If you look closely, you see what it says? It says domain. So this is a vineyard that Jadot bought, and if you look carefully at a lot of Jadot's labels, half of them will say domain because they had a lot of foresight and a lot of money to start to buy vineyards. So they own this. It's a 7-hectare vineyard. If anybody has their phone, multiply it by 2.47. That'll tell you how many acres it is. It's fairly large. So this is a wine that you see around. They own a good plot of this. It's in a village called Santenay. You see how it's the biggest type on the label. The village will always be the biggest type on the label. So Santenay is back in the Côte de Beaune. This is the most southern village in the Côte de Beaune. It has a pretty fashionable casino, so it's a popular village. As far as the wines go, they make fairly robust, sturdy wines. And when we tried this when I initially got here, I was like, it was super elegant. It was like, we were like, whoa, this is like really elegant wine, which I think is partially Jadot. Jadot is a great winery. They produce really good wine. They always have the same label, so you got to look carefully at a bottle of Jadot because it's always the same. This is a picture of Bacchus on the label, which they have made famous. And what you'll see on the label, which we didn't talk about, even though Premier Cruz put the name of the vineyard on the label, if you have a village wine and you can put your vineyard on the label, it's called a Ludi, just to make it more confusing, a place name. So this is a village wine. It's not a Premier Cru, but it does have the name of the specific plot in which the wine comes from. So I thought this was a really great bottle of wine when we tried it. Yeah, it was like, we were like, whoa. It was like, we talked just briefly about just Burgundy. It's like more than the sum of its parts. And this is an example of that. The wines are almost ethereal. They're just like, you're like, how is it that way? And that's why that will keep you coming back to Burgundy over and over and over again. It's just an amazing wine to have. And I think we talked about the roast chicken with the mushrooms. I think perfect for this wine.
So this is what I'm going to take a little bit more time. 2 drops on your nose at a time.
So really pretty red fruits, just so well balanced, like so smooth, almost silky in the mouth.
But not any distinct red fruits.
Yeah, like what is it? It's a whole basket full of berries, myrtle berries, whortleberries, every berry you've ever heard of.
Sorry, it took me a while to get that.
It's kind of spicy though too, and the oak is well integrated into this wine. This is 18 months in oak, and I don't think you'd ever think that. It's just 18 months in oak. It's perfectly done.
One of the things I noticed, we've been doing this class for a long time, when you get one of these really, we'll call them quiet.
Yeah, they're all right.
Everybody just stops.
It's the first one I've done. I haven't. Maybe they're all stupefied and they've had too much to drink.
It is. It goes great with it.
It's beautiful. It was just a beautiful bottle. You get some?
That was wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a bias there, I guess.
Janice,
We were just saying that I've heard lots of people say that wines are great. They never seem to do well on Booking. Like their ratings are never.
So our numbers are
But I've heard so many people
$59.99
like
and
experts say
13%.
they're phenomenal. It's all subjective, obviously.
Yeah, I think Jadot wines are typically a little more structured. They don't show so well young, which is why I think Patrick and I were like, whoa, what's going on? I've drank a lot of Jadot over the years. You put them in your cellar and you age them, they turn out marvelously. They almost never fall apart. You could age them for a really long time if you have a nice cold cellar. But they don't always show well young. They don't always show this well. And this is Santenay. It's like, to me, it's a mystery. I don't know. It's just, I haven't had any cheese yet. I haven't had anything to eat yet tonight.
I mean, you get baked, great baked tart, but it gets really.
That was good cheese. What kind of cheese is that? Yeah.
I'll try to stand by.
So if you're going to do a Burgundy night at some point, one of the cheeses you can find is called Époisse. And he doesn't have it right now, but they usually do. So if you're doing one, that's a cheese from Burgundy that you should definitely try.
What's the soft cheese?
That's a camembert. To elaborate, it's a camembert.
What's the other one? Oh, it's delicious.
I don't know. Yeah.
By the way, everyone.
I hope he's washed his hands.
I was going to try
Wash
and
your
do
hands.
this while I wasn't here. But by the way,
Wash your
a
hands.
well-curated cheese case is a very different thing than a cheese case at Stop and Shop.
Oh,
or a
God,
cheese case
What?
at Whole Foods, or when you do these things and you get to taste these cheeses with what they're intended
Talking about
with,
the obvious.
you want to know where magic comes from.
You didn't mention big wine.
I mentioned the
Yeah,
A-class.
well, they were-
Maybe you want to tell about a couple of cheeses you normally
I think
have
the
from
point
Burgundy.
is still there,
You
right?
want to jump in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that a blend?
Cheesemonger.
Yeah, so there's a few of course you mentioned the Epoisse is kind of the most famous cheese from that Burgundy region, and it's washed with a special brandy that gives it that particular flavor because it is a washed rind cheese. The Epoisse we have sometimes, but not all the time.
Oh, it does.
There's one that's made actually about an hour down the road that we've been carrying a little bit more consistently. It's a little bit smaller. We think the Epoisse is a little bit larger and it tends to be a little stronger, and we find for the American consumer tends to be it takes for a particular person to need that much of that cheese. I love it, and again, when you have the right wine and the right bread with it really sinks. It's an amazing thing. But we're not quite there yet. But so we have a smaller one that we typically carry, but it's just we don't have it all the time. So there are a few cheeses that are made in that region. I was just reading over a bunch of PDO, like geographic name protected French cheeses. So I did have a few there that were kind of surprising. Unfortunately, a lot of them kind of are too small production to be imported. We don't quite follow the same regulations that we need them to get into because they're a little bit too young for they have to be from them. So not a ton from that region, but there are a few of us, and I can look over my list real quick just because I have it out.
What I picked up tonight are delicious with the wines.
Yes, these work really well. And also, if you start to learn something about the wines of the region, and now you feel comfortable, you can go over to the region itself and have those cheeses.
Going up?
What's that?
Are we going up? Going up.
That's good.
Yeah, like I said, there's a couple others, but it's really not a huge production region for export to the U.S. I was lucky enough with some of our other owners went to France earlier in the year. They brought me back some Charleroi,
Is that legal?
which is
No,
it should be able to
Only in the check bag. It's legal in the check bag.
Yeah, which it is. If it's for personal consumption, you definitely can bring cheese back.
But you won't find it in your case.
We tend to just stay quiet. Coming back from customs, we don't always volunteer that. But if you're not selling it, it is technically legal.
We do a kind of opposite. They always evoke conversation about one evokes conversation about the other. We're always happy to be able to be over here because it forces one of them to be with us, whereas the other way, we're not necessarily forced to be with them. So, in any case, let's talk about this last one because we've been doing a lot of talking right here about this.
You asked me to turn around, then you just
And away we go.
Okay. Unfortunately, we've come to the last wine. If only someone would open up some more wine.
Yeah. We had a couple bottles here.
I know.
We had a couple bottles right here. We can open.
We'll back you on that one.
Got a corkscrew?
I would imagine you've had a chance to smell the wine and to taste the wine. Some people have finished it. So here we are in what many consider is probably the best village on the entire planet for Pinot Noir. So this is the village of Vosne Romanée. And there's a common saying in the literature that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years that says there are no common wines made in the village. Yeah, I won't give you the French because my college French is horrible. But that is basically what it translates to. One of the things that we haven't talked about when you're reading these labels is you see the hyphenation here. Okay, so in the 1930s, the villages decided to put the name of their best vineyard on the label. So we talked about Domaine de la Romanée Comtés, like the pinnacle of all things. This is the vineyard, Romanée. So there's La Romanée and Romanée Conti. So Vosne decided to put just Romanée on the label. If you look at your sheet, your map, you'll see Gevry has added Chambertin. Nouilly has added Saint-Georges. Chambol has added Moussigny. So if they have a Grand Cru vineyard in the village, they chose what they thought was the best Grand Cru of the village, and they appended the name. If you didn't, you appended the best Premier Cru they believed. So the bottles that were stolen, Pouligny Montrachet. Montrachet is probably the most celebrated white wine vineyard in the entire world, was appended to both Pouligny and to Chasson because it straddles both villages. So there's something else to remember when you're reading the labels. So this is Vosne Romanée. I don't think I have to say very much about the wine. It's pretty spectacular. And just bear in mind, I mean, it's a village wine, and that's never meant pejoratively. There's 2 more levels above where we are if you had the pocketbook for it. It's the lowest of the best that we have to offer. But, you know, Vosne Romanée just, it has everything. Like, you know, in Gevry and a couple of villages, you get this meatiness we talked about, this hanging meat, this smoked meat. It has that, but it's so much more elegant. And then it has all the spices and the dark and the red fruits. And then it's just wrapped up in a really elegant package. It's silky, full, really delicious styled wine. And that's what Vosne Romanée is. It's a relatively small village with enormous pedigree. It has 6 Grand Cru vineyards in the village, the most of any village in the entire area, and rightly so. It's a pretty spectacular wine. Cachot is a somewhat younger grower, and he's a young guy. He is 4th generation. He makes this. He also makes a Premier Cru, Souchot. And Souchot is a very important vineyard to remember from Vosne because it's sizable. It's about 12 hectares, meaning you can find it. Vosne makes a couple of Premier Crus that are very, very small, very hard to find. And unless you're really searching, you'll be beat out to buy those wines by people really searching. So if you want to go to the next level, there is Souchot. I don't know the price exactly. 150-ish?
This one?
No, the Souchot.
Oh,
Just to give them an idea. It's more, it's more, appreciably more. But you don't always have to go up there. Vosne Romanée, even at this level, is just, you can see it. The glasses are empty. That's how you know it's good. You see? The glasses are empty.
And or they're doing what Bernie's doing down there. And that's exactly what I keep doing. And that is, you keep going back to the nose, you look down through it, you hope it'll last a little bit longer. You hope that the bottle never empties.
It always does, because it's not a Magnum. You need a Magnum or a Jeroboam. You know, I was asking Jan, because she had the bottle up here of the Côte Chalonnaise from Villaine, which they had, and I said, which do you prefer? And she was like, well, I don't know. And when you have like a dinner party at your house and you have multiple bottles on the table, the one that's empty first is the one, you know, people were like, oh, I got to get another piece of that, you know, struggling to get it. And I think this is in the class like that. It's one of those types of wines.
So what's the terroir in this area that makes it so?
So this area, like we've talked about the Côte de Nuit and the Côte de Beaune. The Côte de Nuit, more compact, and you get some red soil. Like it has iron mixed in with the limestone. There's no chalk per se, but it's predominantly limestone clay, and then when it's red, it's iron. And it comes across in these wines, not as ruggedness, but as this sort of spiciness. You know, there's just an extra element here that's missing elsewhere. And I think that has a lot to do with it. But we talked about erosion. I mean, it's just been being mixed up over the years. And Vosne Romanée, it's been mixed up perfectly in this one area. And it's a truly fabulous village. But, you know, other villages you should check out. Gevry-Chambertin is a somewhat larger village. So you'll see almost 3 times as much wine made, which you can actually find. So seek out Gevry-Chambertin if you like the character. It'll be a little fuller, but it'll have the same elegance. And south of here is Nouilly-Saint-Georges. So Nouilly-Saint-Georges will be a little bit more rugged, but full, like a Vosne. It won't have is maybe not as much loveliness, but that's another great village to seek out from the Côte de Nuit. Yeah, it's really, really nice wine. It's fun to drink.
Yeah, that's great.
This is not a vineyard with women,
What's that?
other vineyard with women.
No, this is a guy.
A fee?
Fee. When you see Fee, Fils, that's a son. If you see Filles, it's a daughter.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. So it's and his current his. I know you were a little excited.
Long time since I
You
took
were
French.
a little excited there about that. His name is Gerard. He's the current guy, and I think things are in good hands. One thing I just want to mention. So we talked a little bit about Gamay, okay, and where do you find it? You know, personally, I like Gamay, and maybe you drink Beaujolais and you drink Beaujolais Cru. He makes a fun wine that I love to drink called Bourgogne Pas du Grand. So if you see this word Pas, P-A-S-S, to T-O-U-T, Grand, G-R-A-I-N-S, Pas du Grand, all the grapes, that has Gamay in it. So those wines usually are somewhere between 20-40% Gamay with Pinot Noir. So they're a fruitier version of a Bourgogne Rouge. They generally sell for about $25. Somebody mentioned putting a slight chill on things. I put a chill on that in the fridge. It's delicious. There's almost no structure. They're so... You've had enough, sir. They're delicious, and you should try it out. He also makes one other cool thing, staying with the same guy, called Bourgogne Aligoté. And I would also recommend you try one of those. This entire region used to have a lot of a white grape called Aligoté. And it's fallen out of favor. It doesn't grow as well. You can't sell it for as much money. But you have two examples over here. I don't think you have Cachot, but you have two examples. And it's almost a high wire rack. The wine has like an electrifying amount of acidity. It's so bright and it's super fun to drink in the summertime. I always have it around my birthday because when I turned 21, that's the wine I remembered on my birthday was Aligoté. So I seek it out, but I would highly recommend that as well as something fun to drink.
I was going to say.
What? Aligoté is straight wine, and the Pas du Grand is varying amounts of Gamay, but that's where you can find it if you're looking to try it in any of those appellations. You might have more than one example over there. I think you had Lignier also. They may have had 2 or 3 examples of Pas du Grand, if you see that on the label. Anybody have any questions?
No, I don't.
Oh my God.
All right, Jan, give us some numbers.
So it's $99.99 and 13.1.
26th of August.
22nd.
See? Santé.
You're probably-
I'm a Virgo.
You're a Virgo.
I'm a Virgo. It shows.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Okay, so as we wind up tonight, first thing I want to do as we sort of close down the show here is say much respect, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Does everybody feel like they learned something?
Absolutely.
I sure
Yeah.
as hell.
I knew nothing about Burgundies, and I've gotten a great education
Now you're ready.
tonight.
So now let me ask the next question. Who feels like there's still more to learn about
Oh my
Burgundy?
God, yes.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Never
There
ending.
it is.
Never
The hand
ending.
comes
Never
up.
ending.